transition us to our Building Community Connections panel. And so I'll introduce our panel, if they would like to come forward. We have Dean Johnston, a native of Martinsville, Vice President of Investments and Branch Manager for Stifel, and founder of Move to Martinsville. Anna Wheeler, who recently moved to Martinsville in 2021 and is a program coordinator for the Dan River Basin Association. Missy Bateman, president of the Martinsville-Henry and Patrick County Association of Realtors and a local realtor. And Derrick Ziglar, who recently returned back to Martinsville and is a local property owner and real estate developer. And Dr. Avula will moderate this conversation.
All right, welcome everybody. All right, Anna, you want to start with you? You're holding the mic. Well, why don't each of you just do a quick introduction of yourself and where you fit into the community here.
I'll kick it up to it. So, Derrick Ziglar, so I'm originally from Martinsville, Virginia. I grew up on Fed Street, off of Farmstead. Graduated Martinsville High School 2011. When I graduated, I went up to the Virginia Military Institute, where I played college football there, commissioned into the Army Reserves, and then started a career as an executive at Target. A couple of different leadership opportunities there, where I went from leading teams of about 50 people to leading a department that had over 700 people in it. And then I shifted from that to entrepreneurship. And I would say throughout that time, I did a couple different things. Started doing real estate investing on a smaller scale, flipping houses, little things like that. But in 2020, that's when I started my tech company. And it just opened up a huge world of opportunity for me, meeting different investors in the real estate space, as my company is centered around real estate investing education. And the goal for that was to be able to give people, especially like myself, with backgrounds like myself, that don't have access to people that know a lot about real estate and the opportunity that it gives you to build wealth. And so I said, hey, I can create an application that can do that, gives you this information at your fingertips. And it just opened up a world of meeting different investors and things like that. So I had an opportunity that came to be able to work with some different investors, and I work on the developer side of it and have these investors that would help invest in deals and things like that. And as I was doing my research, because I lived in Dallas, in different Dallas communities, I traveled back and forth to Martinsville a lot at that particular time. And as I traveled back home, something kind of spoke to me. I prayed a lot about it, and I realized that it was a good time for me to come back home and bring those resources back into my community if I was going to do it anywhere, because this is where my people were, my family, my friends, and stuff like that. And so made that move here, and just been kind of rolling since.
Mine will be much shorter. I'm Missy Bateman, and I'm the current Association of Realtors president. I'm also an associate broker and realtor with Cockram Realty. I'm not from here, as many can say, but I chose to stay here 34 years ago, and I love it. And the question was asked earlier, why? Well, it's because of the people. I've moved an awful lot, but it's the good people, the small community, and that's what I found important to stay in the Henry County area. So, thank you.
No, you're in charge of that. Hey y'all, I'm Anna Wheeler, and I recently moved here about 1.5 years ago for a job. I know a lot of people, that's how they come here. So when I got the job, I was just here for 6 months and was just wondering what I was gonna do. So I ended up getting really heavily embedded in the community and really appreciate all of the people who have helped me here. And I decided to stay here and have a full-time job out here, which has really helped me with just like making friendships and learning so much more in a place that actually cares about me. So, yeah.
My name is Dean Johnston. I'm financial advisor here in town, native of the area, graduated from Martinsville High School in 1978. Did like most people, went off to college, left Martinsville for 7 years, worked for the Marriott Corporation. Fall of '89 with a 1-year-old, almost 2-year-old, and another one on the way, it was time to move back home with 8 great-grandparents and 4 grandparents for my daughter still living here in the area. Got involved in financial services, but obviously got involved in the community. And after serving on a number of boards over those years, in the spring of 2019, not knowing that COVID was coming up, a gentleman that had bought a home here in Martinsville, I met at Hamlet Vineyard. Virginia was nice enough to introduce us and said, you talk to him about Martinsville. John said, this is a wonderful place. I don't understand why it's not full. Well, after several opportunities to meet him at Hamlet Vineyards and several glasses of wine, we said that maybe instead of discussing the negative, we should discuss the positive. What can we do about it? So we formed a nonprofit, 501c3, called Move to Martinsville. Premise at that time was everybody was becoming mobile. Everybody's got a phone, plenty of congestion in large cities. No one really wants to live there. But if you can live wherever you want to, why wouldn't you choose my hometown? So we started that effort there, and then obviously coronavirus then proved the mission to be that case. Our mission is to, as we have done here all day long and shown, is to advocate for positive economic change, to promote area assets within a regional concept. As we like to say, Greensboro has our airport, we have their racetrack. And also to facilitate communications amongst community partners here in the area. As in a lot of small towns, we have a lot of good people in this room that do very good work on a daily basis. But we've created silos, make it hard to work together. As an organization that has no structure, but is run by a volunteer board, the only way that we get things accomplished is by working across those lines in collaborations and partnerships. That's why I'm here.
Thank you all. Great to hear your stories and your love for this place. Let's continue on this thread, Dean, of Move to Martinsville. What are the kind of ways that the organization has sought to kind of keep new and existing members connected in a relationship and really build community together?
Sounds like that was teed up, and actually the question was. As an organization, we have been looking at the possibility of people moving here. We want to tell people our story. We hope people will move here. Question becomes, after we ask you to move here, how do we say welcome? Well, all of us may meet our neighbor, but collectively, is there a structure that we welcome people here to the area? And a lot of the individual deeds through the chamber and the EDC, tourism, but collectively, do we ever reach out? So we've been working on a program, a pilot program, to create a newcomer program. That working with the real estate community, they know that people are moving here. That a person that wants information about the community could simply fill out an individual card that is sent to a collective area, that information about the community and where to find things would be very easy to see. And one of the things that would always come up is people say, well, I don't want it to be a social club. We'll have to have something for all these people to come to. Well, all of you know that between TGIFs and the events at the museums and First Fridays and Second Tuesdays, we have plenty of events here in the community. But do we invite people to come? Do we participate ourselves, and do we bring new people there? So hopefully we can create a program where those people that do decide to come here can get the information they need to become part of our community much sooner.
Yeah, that's great. Let's go one level deeper on that. Are there ways that you think the organization has or could, get better at tapping new networks and sort of finding their way into new communities? Or do you guys have a pretty broad reach into folks who are coming to the city?
I don't think it's a specific reach into communities as it is to recognize that all of the events that we want to be involved with should be all-inclusive. Mm-hmm. They're community events. Yeah. Community needs to get people to participate in those. One of the first things that we did was the Reeves Theater. I was involved with the Reeves Theater, which burned down recently. But it created a music venue in Uptown that people participated in. Well, it's hard to have music in the theater that is burned to the ground. We went to Theater Works, a local community theater group, and we said, what do you do on the nights that you're not having plays? Well, it sits empty. So well, let's have music. Okay, so actually we have created something called Music in the Box, which is a music series that is still bringing music to Uptown. So collectively, as we try to revitalize Uptown, both in restaurants and in activities, we felt it was important to keep a music scene going. And collectively, as we plan those, I think the different styles of music obviously reach out to different people. And that's something that we're trying to do.
That's awesome. Anna, let's go to you. You're a newcomer to this community. Talk to us about your entry into the community. What are some of the things that you remember that stand out as ways that helped you feel welcomed and included here?
Yeah, definitely. When I came here, I knew nothing about Martinsville. I drove around and I was like, wow, this is kind of a cool place. I didn't know anybody other than my boss. So when I was, getting introduced to this, it was really important for me to have people who reached out and connected me with people or connected me to events. I know a lot of us are in on like groups and stuff, like Facebook groups and different, pages and get on different email chains, but I was not part of any of that. So a great organic connection to someone was really important to me when I came here. One of them was through my boss and one was through the place I was staying at the moment. So that was really important for me as a newcomer, and then they were able to show me different ways to get connected on my own as well. So then I wasn't just dependent on that. I learned how to make those connections for myself as well as invite other people once I got comfortable in the area.
Are there things that didn't work well, or things that you would like that you'd like to see more of happening here in this community to help welcome folks?
That's a great question. I just think in general, when we are looking around and how many of us hire people in this room right now? We hire people? Yeah, okay. Cool, so when you hire people, try to make some sort of direct connection when we're looking at people moving to Martinsville, right? I know a lot of people who were in a group that I was, introduced with through EDC, and what they wanted to do was go to Greensboro. And I was like, there's so much here that we can do, And keeping those people connected in this community while they're here will really keep them from leaving and moving out for a different executive role or something like that. They want to grow organically here. They want to level up here in this area. So making sure that when we hire new people, we get them connected to people that might have similar interests or just things like that, where people will stay embedded in the community. And when they have that type of presence, they want to stay, they don't want to leave. And just because there's a Trader Joe's in Greensboro, So.
Yeah, okay. Missy, you were president of the Realtors Association, so talk to us about the role the Realtors play and how are they helping newcomers get connected here in town?
Well, as the technology has come, the real estate shopping industry, if you will, has gone from a book that's about 400, 500 pages to the internet. And the internet is how we meet a tremendous amount of our new clients. Maybe they have spent time searching for the best area that has, got the lowest economy, as far as being able to afford. They can get more for their buck here in a house or, in a job. They can live here and then work in another larger city, but the taxes are lower here, things of that nature. So again, via email is how we reach out. So there is no in-person yet. So we've got to go that way. We've got to share with them websites for the city, for the county, what we have to offer, all of the amenities we have here as well regarding the natural resources of the lakes, the mountains, etc. So by the time we finally meet our clients, we're a face-to-face, and they're like, wow, I see why you like the area or why you mentioned this aspect of Martinsville-Henry County is so important. We can introduce them to the Economic Development Council or different job groups. You know, if they say, well, I'm looking for a job, well, why don't you contact such and such, you know, in different ways. Again, that would be over the internet and emails to start off. So when we finally meet them, we're their person, we're their mother, we're their best friend, we're their advocate here. And so while we're showing them houses, in between all of that, we're talking about things to see. Well, why don't we drive by Philpott Dam? Why don't we ride through Uptown? Because you've been looking in the county. Let's go show you what we have to offer here in the community. And that's how we, or I can say myself, but I feel like it's most of the realtors, work with the people that are coming to this area. They may just be coming from Danville. Maybe they moved here for a job and they don't know where to live. So they have to look to us to help them talk about schools, talk about sporting events, talk about the Smith River Complex, things of that nature. So we really take it to heart. I think we all do. There's a few of you in here today. But we take it to heart to help these people want to be part of our community. A lot of them are retired. They don't want the city, no matter how small it is. They want 50 acres, 10 acres. They want the country, you know, the country. They want peace and quiet. Again, that's our job, to help find them, and hopefully 9 times out of 10, I can tell you my clients are beyond happy to be here. And they love this area, and they're talking. They bring their families. More times than not, I've got repeat customers because their brother's moving here, their father's moving here because of what they have found in this area. And again, like I said before, I stayed 34 years ago. I stayed, and I'm glad I stayed.
That's super exciting, Missy. Are there, I'm curious, and I imagine some of these folks are, maybe they know, but are there like a handful of things that are difference makers for people, that like really hook people into this area?
It's the cost of living. It's the no interstates. We call 220, but it's not. And it's being able to find peace and quiet. And that is the majority of people that have come over the past 2 or 3 years that I have been in contact with, from California, from up north, from Florida. They're done with drama. And they just want peace and quiet. They want nice people that will speak to you and not cuss them out on the streets. And that's really what they want. And that's what they're finding here.
That's great. Derrick, you are someone who grew up here, left, decided to come back. Talk to us about why you decided to come back, and then also, you know, why has building community been important to you in your re-entry?
Gotcha. So my reason why building community is important to me is really the reason that drove me to come back. Like I mentioned earlier, growing up on Olmsted off of Fed Street, we didn't have much growing up. My mom, I remember we filled out our FAFSA paperwork my senior year, and Coach Golden was like, your mom only made $23,000 a year. That's amazing that she did what she has done and provided for you and your brother on just that, right? So I didn't understand the dynamic of those things. Then I go to the Virginia Military Institute, and I got thrown into a completely different environment. One that was very hard to really get a grasp on. I struggled my first year. Literally struggled a lot my first year. I didn't like the environment, I didn't like the people, I didn't like a lot of things, right? And it was a military college too, so I didn't choose an easy route. But ultimately I made that decision knowing that the challenges that I would get as an 18-year-old would help me become a better man down the road, right? And so what I've seen and what I learned in my time at BMI showed me how different it is when your environment is not set up for the people in that environment to be successful. And so the passion that gave me, again, as I grew as an entrepreneur, as I built certain connections, as I had an opportunity to then say, hey, I have a network of people that are willing to invest in things, and they're willing to follow my vision. Where do I impart that vision? And as I mentioned, I didn't feel comfortable doing that in a community that I didn't come from. And so I said, hey, you know, we're going back to Martinsville to do it. And I will say that was a huge adjustment because I had a very comfortable lifestyle in Dallas. And so coming here and losing about 99% of the amenities that I had all within a 10-minute car ride was tough. 28 years old and you go from everything within 10 minutes to you having to travel. So that was tough. But I think the important piece of it though, and what I've seen when I moved back and what I continue to see when we do things like this is that we have a small community of people that genuinely care about our city, and they want to see us grow, and they want to see it thriving. For us, as we continue to build our community of people that are pushing toward that, it's important that we think about the next generation. We have an older generation that is dying off, and we're not producing enough babies, right? So I'm contributing to that. I'm 30 with no kids. So I'm part of that group that's not helping us out. But we have to truly think about how do we build for the future, right? And what that means is as we build our community, as we build the amenities, as we build things for Uptown and for Martinsville and Henry County, right? How is it going to help retain talent? How is it going to bring in new talent? And how is it going to help the next generation be able to solve some of the issues that we're dealing with today? Because there's no such thing as putting a Band-Aid over today that solves all our problems, right? However, we can take the steps. We talked about like trades and things like that earlier today. All of that is part of that. It's decisions now that's going to have a positive impact down the road. And so I guess my goal in this is to help be, one, an example of that because of where I did come from, being a black man and being able to stand and say, hey, here's where I came from, here's where I am now, here's where I'm trying to go and have an impact on that. But also, how do I help take that experience and voice that in rooms such as this? So as we continue to make decisions, we think about the communities like I grew up in. So I would say that is the important part of community for me.
Awesome. All right, let's open it up to audience questions. What's our time?
5 minutes.
Okay, great. Let's open up to audience questions, and we'll close out with the final question for the panel.
Jeff was between us and lunch.
Yeah.
We're between.
And out, I know. I get it. It's been a long but exciting day.
I've known Dean forever, so I'm not going to ask him anything. But specifically to Derrick and to Anna, what was the hardest thing about doing what you're doing here, either self-imposed or imposed by the community, that you had to overcome?
Okay. I would say there's a lot of layers to that, especially adding in, one, I am 30 years old, so I'm younger, right? And a lot of my interactions and my dealings with are with people that are old enough to be my parents, grandparents, right? Then you add in the layer of I am a black man as well. And so I think there's a couple different layers of when you think about youthfulness and some of the things that I am a part of, the boards and some of the decisions and communities and things I am a part of, and how that can complicate things. But I would say the biggest complication is something that we hit on earlier, is how easy it is for people to accept the bare minimum here. And so when you are a driver and you don't accept that, and then you're trying to push that, and then you're 30, and then you're a black man, and you're trying to drive all that forward, right? It's a couple of different things that you run into with those things. However, I think that would be the biggest thing here. I kind of am fortunate because I did grow up here. So it makes a lot of difference. I have the connections. I stayed connected with a lot of people, even when I was gone for that 10 years. So I didn't lose a lot of that. However, when I came back, I was in a very different space. I wasn't the same young little boy, that grew up in poverty. It was a very different space. And so what I did is very different. The people I talked to were very different, and some of those situations were. But I would say that would be my biggest thing, is really you layer in my background and who I am, and then what I'm honestly pushing for. I think sometimes it's very different. And a lot of people within a community like this that have had a lot of established people for years, I think that's different for them. And so my job is to build relationships and connections and continue to push forward, and we'll pull as many people as we can forward with this. So.
I'd like to add just one small thing. When I do talk to young people that are moving to this area, not that we can't have old people too, but I emphasize to them, I said, this is a small community. I said, you come from you came from Dallas a short period of time. Bring your ideas. We need new ideas and new faces. I'm not knocking who's been here, but like he's doing now, I mean, this is such an uplift for him to be back and doing what he's doing. But we try to emphasize, or I do as a realtor, we need new ideas and new involvement. So I do try to push that with my clients as well.
I would say the hardest thing is finding people my age. Just because, like, you know, as we were talking earlier, a lot of the people who stay, like, what, 60% of 16 to 24-year-olds or 26-year-olds stay here. They usually are in their own silos, from what I've seen. Don't judge me on that. But it's hard to find those type of connections. I have like made a lot of connections with a lot of people in here, and just finding like people my age to relate with and like find things to do with, it has been one of my hardest things. But I love all the connections that I've made here, and I look forward to, you know, all the new friends I'll make. So.
All right, oh, we got one more.
So just to touch on what you just said, Anna, and this is a challenge for not just you guys up there, but also me, like I work for the EDC. How are we engaging people that have been here their whole life? Like I've been here, with the exception of the time I spent in Bradford for college. You know, how are we engaging our young people who are here, connecting them, getting them outside of their silos, and thinking outside of our own silos? You know, I didn't experience a lot of what I currently do, seeing a lot of the things in this job before I got it. You know, I worked for our community college, I engaged with that community and those students, but if you're not in some of these positions that we're in, we don't necessarily see those things happening. So how are we engaging with those people as well? And again, that's a question for myself too.
I think all of us have a responsibility when we move somewhere to become engaged. We could probably do a better job of reaching out. But I meet a lot of people that have moved here from other areas that it's amazing over a year's time frame what they found here that they didn't know. And then part of my question is always to kind of push back to ask, so why didn't you know? Who did you not ask? What information did we not give you? I know the EDC tourism, their site is fantastic. There's no one in this room that wouldn't say that we collectively need a good community calendar. We have several of them. But does anyone use it? That's the question. Or do they look at the calendar to see if there's a conflict for their next fundraiser? So we've got to encourage people to participate, because there are activities here, activities that don't have walls up that say only one size, one color fits. They're community activities that we don't participate as citizens that live here, much less reaching out to other people to invite them. So I think we have a responsibility to participate and then to invite others to participate with us.
All right, so the mental needs, oh, there's one more question, go ahead.
Thank you all so much for everything that you shared thus far. But I do have a question. When we speak in reference to getting our community involved and the things that we have available, such as like, you know, might be the wine tastings, or things at the Piedmont Art, or the events uptown, the Thursday. Okay, so from the perspective of a young Black entrepreneur within the community, the spaces you reference, well, it's not a sign up. There's never a sign. The signs went down a long time ago. There's never a sign, but it's more so sometimes I think opening up an avenue where people can feel accepted as they are, because sometimes what will happen is that people will do a personal gentrification to fit into other spaces, to be a part of what is moving forward, versus, and then have a completely separate being outside of those spaces. So how do we authentically meet our neighbors and authentically build those true relationships when we're meeting an authentic version of themselves? And I think that starts by having a more diverse options, whether it's having auctions for Black painters or multicultural. I'm just saying it because that's how I am. But but just having multiple cultural, generational, just things that will say, hey, you're a part of this community. I'm not asking you to come into my space, but I'm opening up a space that is uniquely yours. And I think that sometimes that's the disconnect, where I love my community, I have a business within my community, but I don't always participate in community activities because maybe I don't feel like putting on a show today. You see what I'm saying? So I think that just learning our neighbors for who they really are and the full facet of them as a person can sometimes help with seeing more true involvement. But that's all. I don't know, that was not a question.
But you bring up a great point, and I think for the people here representing both the chambers, Uptown, the Uptown organization, Jeff helping that group. One of the first consultants that came when I was chairman of the EDC back in the early 90s, in the very first chapter of their conclusion said we needed a vibrant Uptown. Then it was called Downtown, but we changed the name for a couple of different reasons. But every consultant since then has ended up with that same first chapter. We need a vibrant Uptown. If you're going to come look at this place from an EDC standpoint, you may read the newspaper, you may watch Channel 21, 18, whatever it is, and get an impression. But someone's going to drive through the central business district. And I think what Derrick is doing, what Uptown's doing, what Jeff's doing, getting people uptown is a communal place. Because Fayette Street's just as close to Uptown as Mulberry is. But the more that we can have activities going on, I think you'll get the blending of colors and styles and attitudes that will make it a whole lot easier, as opposed to, I've got my event in my corner, you've got your event in your corner. Well, let's bring them all to the central place.
Yes, absolutely.
And then I guess to add to that as well, something that I've seen a lot, like in Dallas, and they do them in a lot of bigger cities, is they set up these different events that she said is kind of catered to a specific thing. It's, we're going to have an R&B and jazz night here, and then you have a lot of people from the Black community that do come because they feel like, hey, I can listen to this music, I'll listen to them play. And then what a lot of people don't realize too is there is a huge population of white people as well that love to listen to the old classic R&B songs and the jazz music and things like that. So now what happens is the community blends together because you did base it on something that you knew, hey, we'll grab this group, and there's still a large population on the other side too that will come and actually be a part of that. And then you have a successful event, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then what happens now is you have these different people that are coming together and meeting. And I think, in our community, we have a lot of events, we have a lot of things that's going on. I think we do a good job of making sure there are things that are going on. I think the difference is, and what Angel was really hitting on, is a lot of those things, you don't see a lot of diversity there because what's happening there doesn't appeal to them. And so when you do come to those events, you feel out of place. You don't feel like it's a safe space, so if you come to it, you're in and out. There's a lot of events I go to because it's right across the street from where I'm at. So I'll go, I'll shake hands, meet with a couple people, and then I'm out. And that's just more so of just being a sociable person and just showing my face, right? Versus me saying, hey, I actually want to be here and enjoy myself. Let me invite my cousins and my brother, and let me invite my friends and family too and be there. So I think that's kind of where we start to shift really when you start looking at, I think it was Dr. Talley that mentioned the benchmark of actually seeing the diversity versus it being a check mark, is when we start doing things and you actually see our whole community come together. That is us, that is blacks, whites, that's the Latino population, the Mexican, Hispanic population as well, because we do have a nice population of them too. And I think a lot of times, as we mentioned, we don't talk about them because it tends to be, just us in the room. But that is kind of where you start to see the real blending of that, and that's how you actually strengthen a community, because that is a huge population of economic impact that goes outside of our community because they don't feel welcome in our community, spending their money or going to events. And so what happens is we're looking and trying to say, hey, how do we support more small businesses? Well, you have a large piece of a Martinsville population that's taking their business somewhere else because they feel more comfortable as black and brown people to spend their money there and to go to those events and places versus in their own community. So we do lose a lot by not having that strong connection between both pieces of that, both sides of that is what I would say.
I wasn't going to say anything, but I want to put a plug in. One is 1 year, Uptown, when we were up there, they had the, I guess it was Cinco de Mayo. I don't know if anybody remember that. Okay, we were Uptown, and I will tell you that was the most successful event for its first year. Our members stayed after to participate in it. Not only did I see that our members participated in it, but I saw a vast, diverse population that attended that. The following year, it became the Spring Fling. And I didn't see the participation. Our members weren't interested in it. They were really upset that the following year, they didn't have Cinco de Mayo event. So I want to put a plug in for our city officials or whoever is in the room to bring that back. Because you saw a lot of Latinx that were there, and you kind of understood the culture, some of the things that happens in their environment. And then the second thing, and I'm sorry to piggyback off of, is it Angel? But the second thing is I do have some Latinx that are members, and what they're saying to me is that if they see an event, and let's say it's a flyer, and if it's not in Spanish, they don't feel invited. And as a board member on the Minority Business Consortium, I have, went to them and say, okay, here's my flyer. Can you check my translation, make sure it's correct so we can reach the Latinx population? So I want to put a plug to that, is that when we're posting, especially when it's events, if you will put it in Spanish, find someone that will help you translate and put it in Spanish, and ask them to share it, because I do that as well. I asked them, I said, we have this going on, can you share it on your page? And I'm noticing that when they do share it, they'll have someone to comment in their section and say, it's something in Spanish, can you help me? So I just want to put that plug in there. If we're trying to reach that population, it has to be invited to them, because if they don't see it in Spanish, that's just their culture. If they don't see it in Spanish, then they don't feel like they're invited.
All right. Well, it sounds like we've got the blueprint. We need more events that are created with and by people of different cultures and backgrounds. We need more young people. We need Derrick to have some babies. So with that, I'm going to final one or two of you. If you would just say what is hopeful about the kind of community that's being built in Martinsville County.
All right. I would say what is hopeful is the fact that I've been back now a little bit over a year, and the energy that I've seen for not just Uptown, but Martinsville-Henry County as a whole, from the time when I first came here to what we see today, has continued to grow. And I think it's accelerating as well. There are more and more people at every event, every organizational meeting, and things that are talking about what's going on and then wanting to see that continue. And so all you needed was a couple of catalysts and to get the party started. And now you're bringing together organizations and key players within the city and in the county to be able to help this thing continue to move forward. And so I see that happening. That's the exciting part. It's not an overnight transformation. We talked about that earlier today, and I think as community members, we need to understand that, but continue to support the progress that's happening.
What I would like to see, and I guess again, having been around as long as I have here, is, and I don't know if the right people are in the room, but more businesses. I know there's a number of businesses, so I've heard third party that didn't show up over the last 30 years for various reasons. And that's building on more people, more involvement from the newcomers, the outsiders that are familiar with large cities that promote different industries. It's not just giving someone a tax credit and they stay 5 years and leave. They need to stay because they were determined to stay and they want to be a part of this community. But I want to see the industries grow back into this area, into our industrial parks, bringing in more people, which would help us as realtors, but more importantly, it would build the community. And we don't want to be a Greensboro or Raleigh, but it would simply build our small community in something more rich and cultural. That's just what I would like to see in the business world.
I love the positivity. A lot of people in here share so many great experiences and have so many positive things to say about Martinsville-Henry County, and I just love that there's that positive movement. We need to just keep on the train and just be excited about what's here and what's to come.
Be positive. It doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
And it sells a whole lot better than being negative.
Awesome. Well, let's give our panel a round of applause.